So let us start with the first presentation. So each of you will have maximum 20 minutes for your presentation, and we will go like the first four presentations together, and then we will have around 20 minutes before the break for comments, feedback for any of the presentation. So you can take notes while listening. Now let's start with Miss Karen's presentation. So please.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the title of my thesis is Identity Politics 2.0, Negotiating the 21st Century Chineseness in Sydney and Vancouver. I'm working on my PhD thesis at the Institute for Culture and Society at the Western Sydney University. Here's a little bit of background on why I'm doing the research and why this topic. I'm a third-generation Chinese Filipino, but I migrated to Canada in the 1990s. I did my master's in Simon Fraser University, and I started my PhD in Western Sydney in 2016. And I am diasporic Chinese identified sometimes, and this is why this study is being done today. So the first thing I look at is the biggest, the widest, the broadest topic for this to look into the problem is the problem of identity politics, which has been questioned in the academe and politics and general society today. Then I narrow it down to Chineseness, and then I narrowed it further to 21st century Chineseness, and then I narrowed it down to diasporic Chineseness, meaning Chinese people outside China. And then I look at the politics of diasporic Chineseness in the cities of Sydney and Vancouver. The problem statement, I'm looking at the problem within the field of cultural studies. So the problem is the 21st century Chineseness. That's the main topic. And I'm looking into the anti-Chinese sentiments today, which I see as a form of identity politics that is fostering tensions. I call this Identity Politics 1.0 in my thesis. The social problem is the widespread anti-Chinese sentiment reflects the peril and the promise of identity politics. From my review of literature, I saw that the promise is that identity politics has provided recognition and representation for many groups of people, minority groups of people like women's liberation, gay liberation, African Americans, and they also allow access to more equitable relationship for employment, for education, etc. However, identity politics also essentializes people into groups that in order to build unity, but it also reified and solidifies identities. Given that, that is why there is a divisive exclusion and inclusion based on these differences. So summary of the problem is in theory, this is the problem, the promise of identity politics with the perils of identity politics. I get the paradox of whether it's good or bad, the positive and negative aspects of it. So the research gap that I'm looking at starts from the problem of 21st century anti-Chinese sentiment and tensions due to identity politics, And I look at 21st century because there has been a lot of literature on earlier anti-Chinese sentiments in literature. So I'm looking at 21st century because it's after the rise of China and the globalization in the 1990s. And then my research question is motivated by that. My question is, how does identity politics of Chineseness become such a site for friction? So the theoretical gap is the paradox that I'm looking at. The research question I'm looking at is how to reframe Chineseness and its political articulation so that we might recover the promise and mitigate the peril of identity politics, which I call 1.0. My argument, which I'm trying to explore, is by using a post-positivist approach, I formulate an identity politics 2.0 as one alternative to conceptualize and practice identity politics today. So this is a summary of my questions and purpose. This is very good outline by Dr. Ray to make sure they align. So research questions. The first is, given the tensions over Chineseness today, what is the impact of the current practice of identity politics on diasporic Chinese identified individuals in Sydney? Second question, in exploring the identity negotiation process of diasporic Chinese identified individuals, how do the responses inform what has been overlooked in how identity politics has been practiced? And third, what are the implications of their responses on how we might rethink of politics of Chineseness, where identity might be a site for new meanings and political direction? So the purpose of this thesis is to show the impact of identity politics 1.0 and how it shapes societal relations at interpersonal, municipal, and national levels. And then I examine how it is, I use it to examine how identity is formed, reconfigured, and animated through political practices often occluded from contemporary identity politics today. And the third is to formulate the new framework, which I call Identity Politics 2.0, which is grounded on empirical data where identity politics might be practiced to continue countering dehumanizing and inequitable relations. So definition of terms for this thesis, I use identity politics as coined by the Combahee River Collective in 1978. It is based on struggle to be seen as equally human and as a response to unjust precarity. So that is the definition of the Combahee River Collective. And the operational definition for my thesis of identity politics are the conditions of possibility for people self-identified and ascribed as Chinese after the rise of China. For the literature review, I introduced the history of identity politics since then, 1970s, the promise that it fulfilled, and then the peril, the problems that it came up with as it tried to do this, the promise. So I then end up with the paradox of identity politics. For this thesis, specifically, my literature review will focus on this. I look at the short history of 20th century Chineseness. In the past, there are a lot of studies, and they are based on how they are racialized and how within group Chinese chauvinism also takes place, and how they're being re-sinicized depending on the condition of China as a nation has been the past century. So there's more detail on the Han chauvinism among Chinese, and these are the they're being re-sinicized based on different kinds of Chineses here. So for my central topic is 21st century Chineseness. I focus again on racialization, but it has changed. It has been expanded as other people of color are included today, and other minority marginalized groups are included in the racialization. And ethnic chauvinism, it has expanded also today among different kinds of Chineses. And PRC ethno-nationalism, the rise of China, has made China produce some new initiatives across the world towards all diasporic Chinese identified people. And methodology, this study is a qualitative research wherein I use interviews using purposive snowball sampling. I got prior and free consent, and they are all anonymous. And then I did 2 critical incident studies, one in Sydney and one in Vancouver. I did some limited participant observation, and I also used a lot of public records, digital news, and social media such as YouTube and Twitter. And I also used illustrative analysis of the cases to examine the three levels of relationships in order to demonstrate the pervasive practice of identity politics and look further into the responses of these participants. The findings, I base it on the three questions. Research question number 1. My empirical chapters are divided into 3 chapters, wherein I do the same thing. I show the impact, I show the responses, and the implications. So for chapter 4, the data consists of interviews mostly, and these are the data I got from the interview. So they're very intimate narratives of their the negotiation, how they negotiate their identity as Chinese today. And in terms of politics, you can see how they are defined by relationships shaped by denial, rejection, and erasure. And in chapter 5, the impact of Chineseness 1.0 or identity politics 1.0, I looked at the case of municipal rezoning, and Chineseness was being deployed to respond to the other problems, which are the rising property values, affordable housing shortage, and the neoliberal immigration policies. So the politics of it is that they use the language of saving Chinatown, but it's for the new Chinese immigrants. And they erase the community and the history of Chinatown, which is currently and has been in Vancouver for the past 150 years. And that's the impact. And then the impact for Sydney is Chineseness is used as a strawman for its geopolitical tension with China because it's geographically closer to China. So there's a lot of Chinese capital investments in industry, education, and civic sectors. So there's the production they propose a new bill where they produce a new dangerous Chinese community en masse with heightened measures of policing of people identified as Chinese. And findings number 2, to answer research question number 2, the responses. And these are the data on how my participants and how my fieldwork demonstrate how they reframe Chineseness. So they show how Chinese is a lived hybridity of as a fluid, multiple, and ambivalent. And the politics, they participated in politics by transforming their emotions of inequity that they experience. And in chapter 5, I reframe Chineseness by showing how different Chineses emerge out of all there were a lot of rallies during that time, the municipal hearing and everything, like different Chineses were coming out with different, on different sides of the debate. So this is to challenge the typical tropes of Chineseness. And the politics is how different groups inserted themselves into public that they have not been doing to show their visibility, to show their history and community, which is place-based in Vancouver. It has nothing to do with China, nothing to do with the new Chinese coming in. It has to do with their history as place people, with their place history within Vancouver's history, within the city of Vancouver. And in Sydney, I reframe Chineseness by disrupting the notion of foreignness, which has been attached to Chinese and the dangerous ascription. And I show how they participated in the Australian democratic culture, which demonstrate that who is Chinese if what you do is you're practicing what is basically Australian constitution instead of what they're saying as non-democratic China, right? So I show the conflict here, and then the politics is how they appeared in public and voiced out how they broke the hegemonic formation of being Chinese as foreign and dangerous, because they participated in the local democratic culture of Australia, which is not in China. So findings number 3, the question is the implications of all those data, the impact the data, so what does it mean, what they're doing. In reframing Chineseness, I describe it as we need to view Chineseness as an affective structure and a site for transforming relations. How am I with time? And the politics is, yeah, they transform the relations. They did something, like they articulate their Chineseness by changing the relationships. And chapter 5 in Vancouver, they show the Chineseness is place-based. So they're based in Vancouver. What they're fighting for are local problems in Vancouver, in the neighborhood, together with other groups who have been marginalized in the housing shortage. And then same thing, they inserted, I have more concrete actions here described in this chapter. And in Sydney, Chineseness is seen as participating in action as a site for the cultural production. The culture is locally Australian democratic liberal um, polity instead of what they're criticizing as foreign and dangerous PRC muscular approach. And this is how they broke um, the appearances in public. They did a lot of symposiums. They approached. They wrote letters to the parliament and everything. The details are in my thesis. So to summarize, this is the problem I'm approaching. I broke identity. I redefined identity and how politics is manifested. And this is what I did during the thesis. And I came out. I redefined identity and politics to create Chineseness under Identity Politics 2.0. This is a simple version. This is the complicated version of my thesis. Since I have the data already, so I base it on the 3 questions again. And the impact of Chineseness, I describe identity politics 1.0 and how the paradox of its hegemonic and counter-hegemonic logical practice. So I looked into multiscalar relations in Sydney and Vancouver. So with each chapter 4, I did the interpersonal interviews to see how identity politics 1.0 shape relations between people and relations within a city and relations nationally. And second question, I did this. I interrogate what they did, how they talked about it, how they processed their Chineseness. And these are the things that emerge: the role of affect, the role of being place-based, creating place-based coalition, and the role of participant action. And my third question is implications for this new framework after I got this data. The analysis shows that my post-positivist approach produced new meanings of Chinese and to recognize new political practices that are not divisive or essentializing. Then I ended creating the framework for what identity politics 2.0 might look like without it being divisive and essentializing. Summary, the same thing. This is more conceptual summary, the impact. I show how hegemonic logics of identity politics 1.0 foster division and forcing inclusion, as seen the affected impact. And then I also show the negative control in municipal and national issues. I show this. And second question, participant responses of the embedded self-constituted Chineseness. They use it to transform relations. They use it to resist marginality and to challenge exclusion. And question number 3, I unpack closer in terms of concept, this time on how Chineseness is an effective structure. It is a site for this coalition across differences and a site for cultural production.
Sorry, your time is up, Miss Karen.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great presentation. Thank you. Now let's move to Miss Alma, please. Please present your research.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
we can hear you.
Okay. So the title of my paper is Interfaith Dialogue Initiatives for Peace Building from Faith-Based Organizations in South Philippines and South Thailand. What happened? Sorry. Why? Okay. Sorry. For the introduction, on the research problem funnel, the broad context of my paper is about religion and peace building, and what is known already and relevant studies up to date. I search on religion, conflict studies, interfaith dialogue, peace building. However, I found some limitations of previous studies, or like a problem, which is like too generalization of religions. And so I found some gap. So the aim of my study to address the problem is to look at the local context, which is based on faith-based initiatives. And so my research question is, main research question is how faith-based organization in Thailand and Philippines initiate interfaith dialogue and peace building. Happen. Sorry. Oh my God. My PowerPoint is okay. Sorry for this. So the research gap, the theory and knowledge gap, there are areas or contexts that has not yet been explored or unexplored, and examination of old theories. And I see there's a need for a creation of new theories. Social practice gap. There are a lot of works on interfaith dialogue, but less documented. And there is a disconnect between best practice and actual practice. So the rationale of my paper, the reason for conducting this research is to demonstrate the role of religion in peace building and examine how different faiths use religious resources to contribute to peace building in conflict-torn societies like in southern Philippines and southern Thailand. I have 4 research questions. So research question number 1, what are the conflicts related to different religious groups present in the Philippines and in Thailand? So my purpose is to identify the conflict. Research question number 2, what kinds of interfaith dialogue initiatives have been done to resolve conflicts and promote peace by faith-based organization in southern Philippines and South Thailand? And so my purpose is to review the interfaith dialogue initiatives. Research question number 3, how do the political and cultural and religious context create opportunities and challenges for their interfaith dialogue work for each country? My purpose is to evaluate the political, cultural, and religious context. 4, how does each context contribute to the formulation of their interfaith peace building framework? My purpose is to assess each context. So my thesis statement, religions have often been implicated in violence and conflict. However, its religious traditions has contributed in building peace and have significant elements in promoting understanding and reconciliation. For the scope, limitation, and delimitation, faith building interfaith, faith-based organizations, interfaith initiatives in conflict-torn societies in Thailand. That's my scope. The limitation, I will only work on the major faith-based organization and their activities, meaning I will not include small groups or non-faith-based. Delimitation, not included in my work, non-faith-based organization, and only the faith-based organization based in southern part of Thailand and Philippines, meaning I will not include work on the northern part. So this is my framework to show how I situate my research question in a comparative study or in a case study like Southern Philippines and Southern Thailand for both organizations. So the research question 1 and 2 is more on looking at both countries, and research question number 3 is on looking at the similarities in conflicting positions, because they have similarities in conflicting position like political, both countries have claimed for independence. Religion, there are different religions different theologies in hermeneutics and culture, different cultural ethnicity, both countries. And research question number 4, how does its context contribute to the formulation of interfaith peace building framework? That's already comparing two countries, and here I will apply the grounded theory. For the literature review, chapter 2. This chapter consists of 3 parts. The first part consists of general overview of the existing pieces of literatures on the position of conflict discourses. The second part is about religion and peace building. And the third part is existing academic works on the interfaith dialogue in southern Thailand and southern Philippines. Sorry, what happened? Okay. Sorry for this. For the literature review framework, I summarized the literature review in just this diagram. So I divided my literature review into 3 groups of perspectives. So group 1, authors, they have perspective on religion and conflict, like Meyer, Harris, Hitzken, Ross, and many others. So their discourses asserted that religion is a source of conflict, that intolerance is inherited in all religious tradition, there's an inclination to violence. And my critique on that is they're putting religion in a private sphere, they seclude religion from social agendas. So it also make broad generalization that all religion is a principal source of conflict in the world. The group 2 authors are authors more on perspective on religion and peace building, like Gopin, like Appleby, Abonimir, and others. Their discourses are religions have significantly contributed to the resolution and mediation. Religion is contributed to peace building. I have also a critique that this literature also have a tendency for making broad generalization and proclaiming the relevance of religion's role as recently identified source of peace building. However, the interpretations, categorization, and explanation of the context, the scope, structure, and kinds of conflict are still insufficient, and no examples how religion might be used as a beneficial tool for peace building have been provided. And the group 3 authors are authors for interfaith dialogue and faith-based organizations like Samarta, Abonimir, and many others. Discourses, the interfaith dialogue may be used as a public tool to initiate engaging people in conversation and motivating change, particularly at the grassroots level. My critique, dialogue must be inclusive for all, multicultural and multi-religious and multi-generational. And it must be contextual in nature. So this is another model to show the literature review by Turaco in 2005. The literature reviews look at on the basis of your analysis, critique, and synthesis. So my analysis of all the readings, religion as a source of conflict, source of peace, religious resources as a tool for peace building, and there are varieties of interfaith dialogue. Yeah, my critique, as I mentioned, there's a seclusion of religion from social agenda, broad generalization of religion, and there's a need for a paradigm for multicultural and multi-religious perspective. The synthesis, there's a limit of interreligious dialogue or interfaith dialogue because of multifaceted source of conflict. And interfaith must be contextual in nature. Chapter 3, methodology. This is the preview of my methodology. I will be working on a qualitative paper. It will be a case study approach of a faith-based organization in southern Thailand, in southern Philippines. My method for gathering data is document analysis or research, in-depth interviews, semi-structured interviews, participant observation, field log, and reflexive journal. And I will be doing grounded theory, and it is inductive in approach, and I will practice trustworthiness and ethical considerations. So that's the summary. So in detail, this is it. So the case study approach, grounded theory, because we say grounded theory is development of theory and analysis out from the collected data. And it is inductive approach because the theory is generated from the research rather than testing theory through research. For the data collection, so it's library and document research from books, reports, in journals, in-depth interview. So here is the process. So you know how to conduct interviews. We send letter first, we take their informed consent, and then you proceed the interview, and after that we'll give thank you letter. Yeah, participants observation. So this is the table on data collection and data analysis method. This is now the summary. So with my research question and research purpose, I have 4 research questions. So the sampling method, I will be studying or interviewing the religious leaders, the director of the faith-based organizations, the staff, or even the alumni of the Interfaith Dialogue Forum. Respondents, I expect 15. Then there should be balance of gender, religious affiliation, and ethnicity. Data collection method, library, as I mentioned a while ago. Then here are the sample interview or survey question, and the data analysis would be coding. So the organizational level of analysis, in South Philippines, there are Christian majority and Muslim minority. In South Thailand, the Buddhist majority, Thai Muslims, Malay Muslims in the middle, and Christian minority. Structures of conflict, as I mentioned, political, religious, and cultural. For the faith-based organization, we'll be studying Silsila Dialogue Movement in the Philippines and the Bishop Ulama Conference. Oh, sorry, in the Philippines. It was interchanged. For the Southern Thailand, I learned that there's a Religion for Peace Interreligious Council of Thailand, but I still have to check this with Miss Lek, because I learned that this is in Mahidol University, which is in the north. So I'm not sure if I will be working with this organization, but there is also a Bishop Ulama Conference in Thailand. So I can work both Bishop Ulama Conference, both in Thailand and in the Philippines. So the respondents, religious leaders, 15 people I expect, who formally represented the religious organizations. So for data analysis of data is through coding. Reading and rereading. So in coding, you have to read and reread the initial noting, developing emergent themes, searching for connections among emergent themes, and moving to the next case, then looking for patterns across the cases. This is according to Smith in 2009. So yeah, I will practice trustworthiness, which is I have to review semi-structured interview protocol and in-depth protocol. I will consult always my advisor and some other research scholars and apply members check to this project for the accuracy of my report. And ethics, do no harm. Let's take their informed consent, and before going to the field, secure approval from the Research Ethics Board of the university before starting the field study. Thank you very much. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Almar. You presented only within 15 minutes. Wonderful. Thank you. Let's move to Nai's presentation, please.
Okay, can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my topic on Dr. Lee's class, Religious and Peace Building. So my topic is on grassroots Muslim women in religious conflict prevention in Tanzania, their roles, contribution, and challenges. So this is the layout of what I'll be speaking, and chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And to begin with, Tanzania, to give an introduction, Tanzania is a secular state and a country that has freedom of worship to all citizens, provided that they don't have they do not contravene the laws of the land, nor intervene the rights of the other people. But also, Tanzania has two sides of the region, like the minor religions and the dominant religions. The minor religions are African traditional religion and Hinduism that construct less than 10%. And the dominant religion in Tanzania are Christian and Islamic. So the problem statement, or what made me do this research, is presence of religious conflict in Tanzania, which is in both inter and intra-religious conflict. So I have the purpose of the study, and the research questions are threefold. To start with, the purpose of the study is to examine the roles of grassroots Muslim women in religious conflict prevention in Tanzania, to examine the contributions of grassroots Muslim women in religious conflict prevention in Tanzania, and to study the challenges. So the same thing is what I'm doing in or asking in the research questions. What are the roles? What are the contributions and the challenges of these grassroots Muslim women in religious conflict prevention in Tanzania? So I have the contribution and the significance of the study. After doing the whole study, the research contribution is based on the findings, but also the existing theory of United Nations Security Council resolution of the 1325 on women, peace and security that reaffirms the important role of women in conflict prevention and stresses on equal participation. But the significance of this study is on the topic itself, addressing the grassroots Muslim women roles, contributions, challenges in religious conflict prevention in Tanzania. So the scope, limitation, and delimitation of this study. The researcher has only focused to study the grassroots Muslim women. And the delimitation is that this paper has not covered the following things. One is the roles, contribution, and challenges of other grassroots religious women that are like African traditionalism and Christianity. But also peace building is a broad term and includes several levels, such as top, mid, and grassroots. So according to Diderot, and stages such as conflict prevention and conflict resolution, conflict transformation, structural reform, according to Lito and Ipo by 2004. So therefore, this study has not covered the two levels, which are top and middle, since it's only focusing on grassroots. But also in peace building stages, it has only covered conflict prevention and not conflict resolution or other forms like conflict transformation. Only conflict prevention is the focus of this study. So that is the chapter 1, the components. And in chapter 2, I have, which is literature review. Before that, the researcher had defined 6 common terms that has been used throughout this paper, which are Muslim women, religion in Tanzania, grassroots, which is one of the levels I've just identified. So according to Paul Lederach, there are 3 levels of approaches to peace building: top, mid, and grassroots levels. And grassroots levels begins from the top, from the bottom of the community. In this case study, it includes the local communities from the villages or members of indigenous carrying out relief projects to help the violence-torn areas. The other component that I've defined is religious conflict, which is presence of war primarily caused or justified by differences in religions and that causes violence. And so I have also listed, as I've said, there are 2 major types of religious conflict, which is inter and intra-religious, which are both present in Tanzania. Then the other term is conflict prevention. So it has 3 concepts. The narrowest conception is referred to the primary prevention, that implies prevention occurs only before violence. Then the broader, which is secondary prevention, includes prevention during the violent phase. And the third conception is referred to tertiary prevention, that is added in peace building in the aftermath of violent conflict. So therefore, this paper has focused in all 3 levels of conflict prevention. So when it comes to literature review, this study has 2 broad literature review, the women roles in peace building and religious women in peace building. In the women roles in peace building, what I've done in the paper that I will be submitting to Dr. Lee is I have analyzed some of the frameworks like United Nations Security resolution of 1325. I've also analyzed Beijing platform, is the common framework also, but also some case studies that involve women roles in peace building. And in the second component, what I've done, I've used some case studies. I remember to use Sudan, Somalia, Zimbabwe, Yemen. So these case studies on how religious women, what are their roles, contribution, and challenges in peace building. So this is how I've done. But also at the end, I had my own conclusion. Like after the literature review, I had a small paragraph, 3-4 lines on what I have concluded. So just to give you the picture of what I've done in my work. In methodology, this study has employed grounded theory simply because the researcher wasn't fully aware if these roles, contribution, challenges of grassroots Muslim women in Tanzania is present or recognized or ignored. And so this study is also descriptive in nature because it has the basic feature of studying and describing the grassroots Muslim women roles, contribution, and challenges. The research design used by the researcher is case study design because of the concentration of one study area, which is Tanzania, but under it, I have 2 branches like Dar es Salaam and Zanzibar. Why these two areas are studied by the researcher? It's because most conflict are in these 2 regions in Tanzania. Nevertheless, the conflicts are in all regions, but they're more dominant in these 2 regions. So the methodological approach used in this study is qualitative, and data was analyzed manually. Both primary and secondary source of data was used. Primary tool used in this research is through in-depth interview, while secondary, the researcher has used published journals, books, and articles to have enough information on this study. Data collection method, this research has used online calling, WhatsApp, the research is not in Tanzania. Language used was Swahili, the national language, and English is used to translate the data analysis. So this paper 1, the features of in-depth interview, what I have both men and women that I've listened to, 4 respondents in each side, but in the male gender, I managed to interview a Muslim teacher. They call Ustaz. That is what the respondent told me, that they call Ustaz. And the 3 other were just from affected community. While as in the women, in the respondents, all the women were not leaders, but they were just women who are in that affected community. Age was 20 to 40 years, only Muslim in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam specifically, and Zanzibar. So this is the summary of the findings, what I have found out. So in the roles, all the respondents had two responses. What they stated as the roles were done by these grassroots Muslim women is to raise awareness and provide religious education. And the contributions, most respondents, apart from adding these 2, they also, few of the respondents added these points, that the concept of empathy, help in maintaining and strengthening peace, but also help in growing Islamic religion. In the challenges, this is what was found out from the respondents, that these grassroots Muslim women face lack of funds to support the work they're doing. They have less power in the community. They have less participation, lack of expertise and skills on conflict prevention, less opportunities given to women to raise their voice and decision making, but also they don't have composed structure. So in the conclusion summary and further research, based on the findings, the researcher conclusion is that the grassroots Muslim women in Tanzania face numerous challenges as compared to the role played and contribution in religious conflict prevention. The researcher noticed that from the respondents' feedback that first, the Islamic culture is more prevalent and hinders Muslim women, especially in Zanzibar, where women are the most cases considered to be mothers and caretakers. And so this is what I found out. One of the respondents, while giving a feedback on the question that I was asking, she mentioned that, especially in Zanzibar, Islamic religion is whereby most of the population is Muslims, like 90% in Zanzibar part are Muslims. So she mentioned that the culture there, the Islamic culture that they do practice hinders women. And so that this is the reason that women are less in these grassroots Muslim groups in supporting or carrying out these religious conflict prevention activities. it's because they're only taken as mothers and caretakers. They're not allowed to do any other activities. Most of the times when they get married, they're told by their husbands to be in and do these home activities. They're not allowed to engage in so many activities. And also, what I also found it was that it was measured by most respondents that Muslim women have less roles and contribution in religious conflict prevention. This is because male role superiority suppressed women. Like the society, especially in Zanzibar, has the patriarch feature, like male are more dominant over women. And so that's the reason. So for example, Amina gave an example in Zanzibar and said men will use religion to claim that they're the head and women and the woman is his follower, and therefore they make decisions on their behalf. This is the reason grassroots women in religious conflict prevention are few. And more explanation are drawn in my paper. So therefore, the researchers' contribution on the existing theory of United Nations now on women, peace and security that reaffirms the important role of women in conflict prevention and stresses on the importance of equal participation has to some extent not been successful in the roles, contribution, and challenges faced by grassroots Muslim women in religious conflict prevention in Tanzania. So summary of the study, this is what I was studying the roles and contribution challenges of grassroots Muslim women in addressing the presence of religious conflict, which is in Tanzania, and the outcome was religious conflict prevention as a peace building mechanism in Tanzania. For further research, first the researchers suggest that other interested research scholars can address the problem and analyze the three components, the roles, contribution, and challenges faced by religious women at the top and middle level, which is not addressed. So second, the researcher also suggests that other interested research scholars can study the need and importance of clear structural forms in Muslim religion in Tanzania, which I've seen that is the problem, in accordance to what the respondents were replying, in accordance to their response. Then the third is the researcher suggests that other peace building stages such as conflict resolution can be studied for further research. So these are my references, general references. And the last slide that I had were the follow-up questions that I was asked when I was presenting my proposal. First, Dr. Lee asked me to follow up if there are present Muslim NGOs in Tanzania, which is yes, they are, but this is the thing, in Muslim society in Tanzania, they only have BAKWATA as the national. BAKWATA is like an organization for all Muslims in Tanzania, and it's in the top level, the national, it's like in the national level. But coming down, like in the regional level and district level, and coming down to the society, Muslims don't have this clear structure. And this is what in the findings I've explained more in my paper. They don't have this structure. And most of the respondents were saying that this might be something that makes the grassroots Muslim women roles and contribution not being well analyzed. That's why they are few as compared to the challenges they faced. Yeah, so also Kate emailed me the sources and tensions if they're merely just religious or the other factors. So what I've learned from the fieldwork is that sources of tensions of religious conflict in Tanzania, they are not only religious, they're like the socioeconomic political factor is there, and like they use the political, social, and economic factor and relate it with religions. I will give you an example. One of the respondents told me that when it comes to politics, when it comes to elections, most of the times they'll use religion as a source, and bring out conflict in society. When it comes to employment, most of the Zanzibar people will say, why do the mainland people come to Zanzibar and take our jobs? So the problem is done in economic, and they will relate it to religious, and that's when the problem resides. And also, Kate asked me if Eberby's analysis of strong, weak, and pathological religious conflict is helpful for my study. I'd like to say that I've not used this because I found that it's not really relevant to my study. So I've not used this analysis to further up my study. So yeah, so that's it.
Great, wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
Now let's move to the number 4. Winbo, please present your term paper.
Yes, yeah, I'm now sharing the screen. Okay, so my paper is on rules of Buddhist monks, Sangha, in peace building in Myanmar. Like originally, the topic was on structural reform, but according to Dr. Lee's comments and also based off my findings, like it is more suitable that I should, if I like broaden the scope of the rule of Buddhist monks like into peace building rather than as a strict structural reform, because this research, it is a very foundational area that is that has been like explored in the Myanmar scholars community. So that's why like I broaden the scope of my research to peace building. And the reason why I chose this area is that if we look at the literatures around Buddhist monks in Myanmar, it is very like overwhelmingly negative. Like there's a lot of negative energy around the literatures because they really emphasize on the ultranationalist Buddhist monks and how they are causing conflicts in Myanmar's politics. So that's why like I would like to explore whether like there is a positive or like there is this constructive side of Buddhist monks that can contribute to peace building in Myanmar. So chapter 1, a very introduction of Myanmar's politics, socio-political landscape, is that Myanmar is a Buddhist majority country with around like 90% of the population being Buddhist, and therefore there is this centrality of Buddhism in Myanmar society, and the military's dominance is a really determining factor in Myanmar politics, as you all might be aware. Yeah, like we have like these frequent coups like happening, and then we have like this like 2008 constitution that puts Myanmar military in the determining role of Myanmar's politics, and we have these ethnic liberationist movements against the central government and also like between the ethnic revolutionary organizations that can be evident in the eastern part of Myanmar, like and then there is this intercommunal conflicts between Buddhists and Muslims that cause a quite significant impact on Myanmar's politics between 2010 to like 2020 and 2020. So yeah, and so the role of monks in Myanmar society, like Sangha is regarded as one of the 3 gems, which is Paya Tanga. In English, like Paya means like God, but not in like omnipotent God. It is more of like a theist version of God. And then there's this teachings leading to heaven as a 2nd gem, and then the 3rd gem is Sangha, like the Buddhist monks. So Sangha, they are one of the 3 gems according to Buddhism, and then they are the bridge between attaining Nirvana, Buddhist teachings, and then Myanmar society. They're very highly respected and honored, and they are the closest to the community, and that makes them not only religious leaders, but also civic and community leaders. Like according to Dr. Mamangji, like he said that Myanmar civil society is the most active in the grassroots, like community levels, and then Buddhist monks are like one of the most active actors in this level. So my thesis statement is that continuously uneasy relationship between the successive governments and then diverse strings of Sangha and its secondary impacts have deprived the Sangha of collective actions to empower and position themselves in relation to constructive peace building in the society in forms beyond the traditional teaching and practice of peace as inward and inner peace. And even though there might be some like mass actions, or not mass actions, like even though there might be some actions that Buddhist monks involved in peace building, it is more of like the individual level, and then more of like a local organizational level rather than as a collective action. So my research question is like we have these very big Sangha and politics sphere. Buddhism and like peace theories feed into that, peace building and faith leaders, Afro-nationalist movements, and causes of intercommunal conflict. So based on that, I draw these two research questions. How historical relationships impact the Sangha's rules in peace building, and what are the challenges and opportunities. So, and it will give us the overview of Sangha and peace building. So chapter 2, literature review. This is a macro level literature review that I focus on. That is religious peace building, conflict transformation, and structural reform. And then there's this meso level literature review that focus on Buddhism, and then criticism of Buddhism and peace building, and then counter arguments that are directed against the criticisms. Like criticisms are usually like Buddhism is very passive and very passive in peace building, and that's why like Buddhist societies are very like confined in cultivating the inner peace. But there are also these counter arguments that says that the Buddhism peace theory is structural, is similar to like structural peace theory and things like that. So this is the meso level literature review I focus on, and then the micro level is this at the which is also like gap searching for the research I'm doing. So there is this structural peace theory of Buddhism in Myanmar transition. There are these literatures, and then Buddhism and monks in Myanmar's politics, and then peace movements in Myanmar, and then Buddhism and Buddhist nationalists in Myanmar's conflict. So these are the existing literatures, and then this is my contribution. My new contribution to the area of studies, Sangha in peace building. So this is the gap I'm going to fill by with the research. So theories, two theories I focus on: Appleby civic leadership theory, and then Ivanomia's theory on ethnic strife and Sri Lanka and Tibet. So these two theories will be used in order to extract the challenges and opportunities in this research. And so like for Scott Appleby, the importance of religious leaders in conflicts, and then organizational structure to incorporate different leaders of people into the peace building efforts, and then peace building education and experience are like significant factors for the religious leaders to be effective in their peace building initiatives. And then Ivanomia's theory focus on like Buddhism, very focused on the inner like cultivation, inner peace cultivation, and then the adoption of mytho-historic narrative that causes like the conflicts. So chapter 3, methodology. My research focus on qualitative literature review method. It uses the combination of historical and then positivist approaches. And the data sources are like academic research papers, books, journal published books, journal articles, and research reports of governmental and non-government NGOs. And also as well as the discussions on social media, especially Facebook, and then blogs and interviews that are related to the research. Historical development. So according to Dr. Lee's comments, I try to like break it down into periods, so it is like easier to understand. So like monks and the Burmese kings, they were like state honor status with systematic ecclesiastical structure, like from the central level to down to the grassroots level. and they were involved in king's policies and administrative decisions. And if there is any tensions between states, monks, some of the senior monks, they act as diplomats in these conflicts. And in the colonial period, they lost all of these status. And then they have this minority complex that is that has been like propagated since colonial period until now. Even though Buddhists form the majority population of the Myanmar population, but monks that they have this minority complex that there is a threat. Threats are transcending on Buddhism, and then other like aliens and foreigners, and so like they are oppressing and trying to destroy like Buddhism. So there is this minority complex among the monks, but like they are also like formidable opponents against the British. Their movements were like very organized. They were they're like activists. Their education, they are the backbone of Myanmar's society. So like they are like social capital. It forms as a formidable opponents against the British. And monks in independence period, after independence, there is continuous Buddhist supremacy movements leading by the Buddhist monks, and they continuously resist the government's regulatory attempts. And Premier Unu, which is the very first democratically elected prime minister after the colonial period. So like under his period, there was this kind of Buddhist revivalism, and Sangha enjoyed an extent of their lost state honor status, but they lost it again under socialist General Niue, who led the coup, military coup in 1962. Yeah. So monks in contemporary Myanmar, they somehow their state honor status, they are like regaining back. But it is important to note that if they want to enjoy this state honor status, they should like remain in religious sphere, because the military and the governments they are not really acceptable, receptive of monks involving in politics. But they can, they still like support Sangha. And monks in contemporary Myanmar, 2015 to 2020, Afro-nationalist sentiments, propagators versus peace activists and educators. So there are these two factions of Buddhist monks that is very prevalent among the Sangha population. And roles of monks in peace building, they utilize teachings of Lord Buddha, their natural higher social status, honor, and moral authority above lay people in peace building. And they use this immunity derived from their social higher social status in Myanmar society. They work as critics, serve as critics, activists, peace educators, local peace builders, and peacekeepers in peace building. And in order to do that, and also like in order to organize very mass movements and initiatives, I could like draw like two sensitivities that lay under their motives, which is one of them is the sensitivity to the perceived threats against Buddhism. And then another thing is the sensitivity to the sufferings of the people. These two sensitivities are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes they can stand alone. Only one of these sensitivities is needed for the Buddhist monks to serve as these roles, or sometimes two of these sensitivities are like the foundations for the Sangha to serve as these roles. So challenges and opportunities. Firstly, opportunities. Sangha, like even though like there are like findings that Buddhism is very passive, and then the Buddhists are passive in peace building. We have these evidence that monks in Myanmar, they are very active in outside these cultivation of inner peace in terms of the peace building, and they use these higher social status influencing the people, so like the people listen to them, and they have these great immunity from persecutions of governments because of their higher social status, and it gives them space to expand their civic and religious leaderships in peace building. And the last thing is that monks associations for like structural reform, they already exist, but mostly they work as underground associations, and therefore like they have these constraints. They work as underground associations because of the previous government's regulatory attempts to regulate the Sangha. Sangha they are like legally restricted to form new Sangha associations or the Sangha associations as long and if they kind of like form these associations, but they collide with the government's policies, or like the government is not happy with them and they just like go underground. So this is the kind of situations that is happening. So like it is a mix of opportunities and challenges, the last one. And challenges are the confusing relationship between state, military, and ultra-nationalist monks who all claim that they are the protector, guardian, and propagator of Buddhism. So it leaves the peace-building Buddhist monks as unpatriotic or like working in the interest of foreign countries or like foreign agents, so those kind of things. So there's this very confusing relationship that restrain Sangha's activities for peace building. And like Myanmar society, like surprisingly, according to the surveys, they have this general dislike of monks working outside religious teachings, even though like Myanmar is a traditional society and monks are like of like higher social status. Recent studies show that people's general dislike of religious leaders and religions in outside the religious teachings are like declining. Inclining. Their dislike is inclining. So, and then initiatives are primarily they are reactive rather than proactive, with a few exceptions that such as like Pangdo monastic education that expands their peace education teachings to outside like Buddhism, and they also like touch on these different secular subject matters in their attempts of peace building. And states continue, the challenge also includes states' continuous attempts to regulate Sangha, leaving Sangha with very limited space to form new institutions or associations as necessary. And the last challenge is the use of mytho-historic narratives to justify their positions outside religious sphere. There is this general public discourse, also like political discourse, that Myanmar ethnic are derived from the Lord Buddha's Sakya clan. So they say that like Myanmar is a rightfully Buddhist country, and therefore Sangha should involve in all of these politics and all of the matters. So this somehow form an exclusivism to other people that are not like Myanmar's recognized ethnic groups, and also like they endorse the like Buddhist supremacy ideas based on this mytho-historic narrative. So yeah, so these are the challenges, and this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Winbo. If you read his paper, you see more things. Yeah, I think his paper is a great paper. So now we will have around 25 minutes for comments, feedback, questions for each of the 4 presentations. Yeah, please. You see in the chat box, Dr. Ray has a long comment. Good paper, Winbo. Some thoughts here. Phrase thesis statement in 1 sentence if you need one. Red flag, structural reform is technical term in neoliberal macroeconomics, which refer to the deregulation, trade liberalization, privatization. First, you cannot pirate structural reform from neoliberal economics to the study of Sangha. Second, assuming for the sake of argument that you can pirate structural reform to study Sangha, are you saying that Sangha should deregulate, liberalize their trade, privatize? In summary, I suggest you don't use the well-established term structural reform. The need for reform of the Sangha, or something to that effect. You cover different themes which are related, but best to stay focused with few key elements in your study. After you finalize your paper based on the colleagues' constructive feedback, you could submit this paper for publication as you have good recommendations. Okay. Structural reform. Yes, I think if you read Winbo paper, he addressed the issue of the term in economic usage. Unfortunately, in this presentation, Winbo did not present or clarify the terms, theoretical terms or concepts that he used. So structural reform, he did address the issue of economic use, and then he also gave reference in theories of religious peace building. This term structural reform is used by David Little and Appleby to refer to the reform of like political institution to address the unjust structural causes, to move toward good government, to resolve the problems, inequality, etc. So structural reform, Dr. Ray, I see this term in Appleby's book. So we cannot blame Winbo for using the term from economic. So I just explain this because I gave the readings on this issue. Any comments, feedback for? Yes,
Dr. Lee, this is Kathy. I have some questions. Thank you all classmates for your wonderful presentations. I've learned a lot and know what to expect in our future classes, but also learned from the existing class through religion and peace building. My question actually is for Alma and your definition or your delineation maybe, or your limitation of religious leaders, as I understand, and because being a religious leader myself as part of not we would call a hierarchy, but understanding that there is levels of religious leadership. I'm wondering, as I saw your methodology and who you seek to interview with staff and those who are part of organizations, I wondered if you will have a diversity even among the religious leaders, so not just institutionalized at the higher levels, but those who may be more at the mid levels, those who are not the archbishop, say, so to speak, that at that level, but those who are also the parish priests or those who are more local church workers. Do you understand what my question is, Alma? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Like on Silsila Dialogue Movement, there are different leaders in each province in Mindanao, like Cagayan, Zamboanga, Cotabato. Each province has different leaders. And you know, my initial findings, all of these leaders are Muslim women. That's another paper to do.
Yeah, that's a whole other paper
Yeah.
for sure, because they do not have any established or institutionalized roles, but they carve out their own spaces. Yeah.
But it's a mix, not just
Yes.
the higher level. When it comes to Bishop Ulama Conference, I will be interviewing, of course, the ulamas, the priests,
Yes.
and the leaders of that community.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other feedbacks, questions? Dr. Ray, would you like to give comments?
Oh, I already gave comments, but in general, the 4 papers are wonderful. Karen was sitting in my class and she had been polishing her paper based on peer feedback, and Alma had learned from Karen, Karen had learned from Alma. So it was very enriching. And we also asked Dr. Lee on our last day to be our critique, and she gave constructive feedback. And the students continually refined their work. And also Alma had been revising constantly and working hard regularly, and Dr. Lee had also pointed out some things. And together we have been helping each other to polish their work. And then I also, I cannot say Alma's paper is publishable because it's still on the proposal stage. No findings yet. Same with Karen. But I told Karen she could publish her own contribution to the literature. She wrote on Identity Politics 1.0, which she labeled, and she came up with her own Identity Politics 2.0. I said that is a great contribution to the dialogue of the binariness of the positivist approach vis-a-vis the identity politics as we know it, and she has her own formulation. So keep that for publication, and then she write her dissertation on the Chineseness in relation to IP 1.0 and 2.0. And then Nai also has paper. She's a great contribution with all of her writings and studies, very focused. I like the way Nai writes, nothing extra, no garbage, everything is straight to the point. And it's really, after Dr. Lee gives her comments for improvement, Nai should hurriedly, she already has one journal article, Scopus, to be published soon, already approved, but she can submit this again. And Wingbo also, she's a great contribution, but I will talk to Dr. Lee and Wingbo separately for some issues. But yeah, it's also a great contribution. But as I said, keep it tight. The way Alma and Nai wrote, very tight. Winbo has some few extra elements If it keeps it tight, it will be wonderful. So all great papers, the first four. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ray. Yes, I'm very happy when I listen to all four presentations. I think wonderful. I only gave feedback to Karen yesterday, so I don't think I should repeat. For Alma, I see like when you use a term for research purpose, I a little bit feel maybe it's the term is better to use, like for example, research question 2, you say about identify initiatives, but I think more appropriate term can be descriptive. I mean, like to describe the initiatives. Research question 3, you use the term to evaluate. I don't think it's evaluate the context, political, religious, cultural, but the more appropriate term can be to analyze how these 3 macro factors can, create constraints and opportunities, things like that. Quick research question 4, you use the word access. I feel maybe not appropriate yet because your purpose is to kind of formulate or construct some kind of grounded framework for dialogue. Maybe another term would be more proper. Literature review, you use the term no example after you review and you critique the second group of literature. When you say no example, that is extreme. In research, we have to avoid because we are not aware of, own studies. So you may be questioned if someone bring you a black swan, here it is, then you will be in trouble. So better don't use extreme language, but better use moderate language, maybe little or understudied, for example. So try to avoid too extreme, in language use in your assertion. Method, again, comparative, because you state it in your research purpose, I remember. And then when you move to research methodology, you completely miss out this element, comparative element in your research methodology. I don't see this box anywhere. Okay, so that's for Alma. For Nai, I think Nai, your paper you should submit for publication. I have never read it because you did not submit to me, but the structure, everything is so good. I'm very amazed when you talk about, you clarify the concept of conflict prevention at 3 levels. Is so kind of, this very good contribution from you, from your own study. And okay. I really like this when you clarify the concept when you study at 3 levels. Okay. This is very good. It shows that you really search for literature, you study it, you try to understand what you do. So I don't know how you analyze your data, but I would suggest that you use these 3 level concepts that you promised. Reflect it in your data reflection. Do you show them in your data reflection at 3 levels of conflict prevention? Do the women, Muslim women at each level, to which extent they play the role and their contributions and the challenges? Or else you in the concept, you clarify it this way, you promise this way, but in data analysis, you don't apply. So they don't match. But I don't know, I just assume. So I am waiting to read your paper to see if these 3 levels are present in your data analysis or not. Okay, and then in your data analysis, in the role, you list out empathy and education. So in my mind, the question arises, how empathy related to conflict prevention?
Okay.
And then education, how? You know, I just have a question because it's very brief. You just present the key terms.
Yeah.
I don't know how you link it to conflict prevention.
Okay. Should I respond now, or maybe
Sure, yes.
Okay. Actually, these were the feedback from the respondents. So when I interviewed them, first on the point of education, on the roles, they said 2 points, education and awareness. And they said that these Muslim women, how they perform the roles in religious conflict prevention is through they educate the society, the community that they live with, that on the effects of conflicts, on the effects of conflicts. What is the destruction, the violence that comes with conflicts? So they use, and they insisted that they use religious holy book, the Quran. They quote some verses from the Quran. They call surah. I have explained that on my work, and they quoted some of the verses that they used to educate the community on the what are the effects of conflict, and even the Quran does not support or allow conflicts within us, so like that. And the concept of empathy, one of the respondents said that women they do teach their children on how to be. She used the term empathy, and she said, sorry, but it's on my paper. I cannot quote her words, but she just explained, and I put that on my paper. I cannot reflect on what she said.
Okay, I'm waiting to read. So you know my questions already. How it links to conflict prevention.
Yeah.
And at 3 levels that you have in your concept. I come to Winbo. I'm fascinated by Winbo's capacity of English usage and literature review, and his wide knowledge about the case, and his capacity to structure his idea. He see at the macro level. He's very deep in his analysis. I think he can be at the PhD level, even though he has bachelor's degree, but I think he can move to PhD level. His paper has a lot of substance. I mean, like very good new information for the case study. But I think he needs to clean his paper more because it's a bit long. It's 12,000 words, standard maximum 10,000, and Winbo need to clarify more on the concept of peace building and have a operational definition how we apply the concept in specific ways. I suggest him to focus on 2 concepts, conflict transformation and structural reform, and define the 2 terms more specifically, and then apply and analyze for the case study. I'm waiting to read his revised paper, but I believe this can be submitted for the Asian Journal of Peace Building, and I believe it will be published. It's very good. So any more comments? We have 5 minutes before the break. Okay, if not, any more? Okay, so let's take a break 5 minutes, and then we can have more time for the last 2 presentations. So let's come back at 10:10. Thank you, everyone. Okay, welcome back. I hope everyone is in. Okay, so the next presentations, we have 3. We will start with Reverend Katie, and then next will be Lazy, and then finally Mr. Ang. Yeah, please, Reverend Katie. You're muted, your microphone. Your microphone, Reverend Katie.
Yes, yes, sorry, I was sorry about that. I was trying to maximize my slides so you can all see better also.
Okay.
Good morning, all. Good morning, friends. Okay, so hopefully you can all see that a little bit better. So my paper topic is about the potential for conflict transformation using 3 case studies of religious actors from BARM. What is BARM, you may be wondering? Some of the other phrases are probably more familiar to you, so let me proceed. I want to give you a little bit of context to help you to understand. What you have on your left, maybe your right of your screen because of the perspective, is a picture of the Philippines, where that's where my home is and where you see the red star, and it's the home of also the country for some of us. But the shaded pink area is known as Mindanao. This is the southern part of the Philippines, and it is also in history known to be a Muslim majority area. And even before the colonizing influences of Spain and the US, this was still very much Muslim majority. You should know also that 2 Islamic sultanates existed even before this colonization experience. One of the sultanates dates back all the way to 1450. This is Sulu and Maguindanao, all the way to 1619. Why am I sharing these experiences of history with you? Is because what was a Muslim majority over time became a Muslim minority because of the experiences not only of Spain and US, but more importantly, after the Philippines became an independent country, this Muslim majority of Moros in their sultanates never had any say in whether they would also be part of the purchase and the actual part of the Philippine nation. Rather, over time, also, these Moros, and these Moros meaning this Muslim majority, also were displaced from their lands. Who were they displaced by? Other Filipino Christian settlers coming from other parts of the Philippines, and with the help of land laws that helped to encourage homesteading settlers to take over these, what had been ancestral lands. Now, all of this experience of not just centuries, but even now decades, also eventually came to a head in the form of civil war between the Philippine government and these Moros. Again, a word and a term that had been previously used by the Spanish to speak lowly of those who were Muslims. But again, over time, from the 1970s, starting with the Civil War until now, the question has become, who are the Moros? And more recently, in the last 3 years, these Moros have banded now and now understood as the Bangsamoro. So in this case, what I'm talking about now is an actual region, a political identity, and Bangsamoro comes from 2 words put together. Bangsa meaning race or nation, and Moro meaning the word Muslim. Now, even though there is a law in effect for this region, and this region itself is already set up according to the map, a lot of measures related to peace are still very much being implemented. This is why, and this is the basis for why a question like conflict transformation exists. As I understand it, the work of conflict transformation is formed by two theories that we studied in our religion and peace building class. And this will be the very basis for my theoretical framework for conflict transformation. Both theories are similar in a way as a whole, in that both are holistic and comprehensive. Both Lederach and Appleby also identify the very contributions that come from immediate or short-term perspectives, as well as medium-term and long-term. However, there is some very distinctive contributions when you look at them with more fine detail. And I would say the first is this. With Appleby, it's not just to identify the complexity of religious actors, those that may also promote peace on one hand, and those that may promote conflict. And yet, there are varying degrees with which those religious actors can contribute. Again, we can think of these as modes of crisis, saturation, or intervention. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The other idea that comes distinctively from Lederach and his work of conflict transformation is that social change that comes through conflict is actually both circular and linear. And this is what I mean by circular and linear, in case that sounds almost like a physical or geometrical impossibility. If you can imagine for yourself in just your mind and thinking about that change itself moves forward, not from one point on your left side of the screen, that being the past, as a linear movement into the future, the right side of your screen. Rather, sometimes change itself comes when relationships do break down, when change has stopped. And rather, this evaluation, this assessment of what has gone wrong actually might lend itself to the idea of not only moving backwards, but moving backwards to evaluate where one has been. And so this idea of moving forward towards social change is not just a linear movement, but does often require the feedback of what one has experienced in the present. Now, what happens when you put both together? There are some convergences of the two theories. And one way that you can see that already is when Appleby is talking about his idea of the intervention mode. In this case, this is where the efforts of religious actors are sustained through local peace advocates, through education and formation. The other thing to keep in mind is that Lederach emphasizes this also in his elicitive method. This elicitive method, just to be clear, is not mentioned in Lederach's conflict transformation language. So that can be a little bit confusing, but it is still practiced in the work of training and mobilizing local leaders and working within the local cultural context to develop their very own homegrown understanding of peace and peace building. So this is the kind of general theoretical framework by which to understand conflict transformation. Now, the three case studies that are featured here are the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Bishops' Ulama Forum, which you heard earlier from Alma, as well as the Moro Christian People's Alliance. I'm sharing these particular three because actually, a little bit similar to what Alma said, there's actually understudied evidence of how these case studies interact with a theoretical framework. I find in my limited literature review that most of the time there are examinations of especially the Organization of Islamic Cooperation or even the Bishops' Ulama Forum, but the theoretical framework is not given. Rather, the case study is almost, incomplete. Now, the reason why I chose the Moro Christian People's Alliance is because this is a grassroots advocacy alliance, and it's also interfaith. However, again, this is one part of literature that is not evident. So actually, you will see shortly that I had to expand beyond the typical primary and secondary sources. Now, my main research question really is to understand within the context of a theoretical framework, to what extent each religious actor contributes to conflict transformation. This presumes that this one actor alone cannot do everything, however, may contribute to the larger holistic framework. And so the sub-questions related to that will be a way of trying to understand how each religious actor on their own may support Appleby's typology of conflict transformation. The other question being how the religious actor may support Lederach's framework of conflict transformation. Now, this is not a one-way street. This is where theoretical framework and this research paper has much to contribute in terms of the experience of these 3 case studies. And my third question would be, how does the experience of this religious actor challenge the existing framework, or perhaps even in that challenge the actual, enhance the framework, pardon me. Now, in order to do this kind of work, I did take upon different literature review that focused on primary and secondary resources. I did have to, as I mentioned earlier, include other what I call gray literature in terms of newspaper articles and other government reports to understand a little bit more about BARM. And then I also needed to look at some of the conference reports that are put out by the Moro-Christian People's Alliance. This is one of the ways that we begin to see some of their contributions. And the example that I give here of a conference review is this Universal Periodic Review. A final source of data comes from an interview with the actual General Secretary from the Moro-Christian People's Alliance, Amira Lida-san. Now, from that, I have a general thesis. And again, it's not a one-sentence thesis, but I'm sure maybe with some refinement, I could move in that direction. But I do understand that each religious actor, that being the OIC, the BUF, and the MC, I switched the letters, MCPA, in their own way, attempted to promote peace building for the Bang's Moro peoples through conflict transformation with mixed results. But when using both Appleby and Lederach's models of conflict transformation, as well as their own religious the religious actors' contributions, it appears that these religious actors have actually the potential to develop and to maintain process structures. That language of process structures comes specifically from Lederach. Now, in the interest of time, because our time is limited, I want to just share briefly some of the examples and introduce you to who are these religious actors and ways in which I've begun to do some of the analysis for each case study. Let me just share with you first, who is the OIC? They are known as the largest grouping of Muslim states, namely representing 57, and they are the only intergovernmental organization that is based on religion. Now, the BARM is considered one of an observer status within this organization, which includes Thailand and Russia. But most of the majority of the members are Muslim majority countries. The exception is made for BARM because of the concern that IOC has for Muslim majorities. And based on the early analysis, while mediation was one way that the OIC contributed towards conflict transformation, there was a sense that perhaps they could have done more beyond mediation, perhaps going on to look at the implementation of actual agreements, informal negotiation. What's noticeable about the OIC is that, especially in this case, is the cultural capacity for peace as identified and supporting Lederach, but also understanding that the cultural capacity is reinforced by the idea that there were Islamic mediators in the process who are actually operating according to Islamic values. Now, one of the ways in which this case study challenges the framework is the actual internal and organizational structure of the OIC itself. Again, this is based on some of the assessment of the research, and that is to say that perhaps the OIC could not do anything more beyond mediation, even though it could. And one way to actually expand upon their efforts would have been to supplement their mediation efforts with local actors and to include that as part of their conflict resolution efforts. So that's just one example coming from that case study. In the next case study, I'd like to share a little bit more about the Bishops' Ulama Forum, and again, to clarify, not from Thailand, but from Mindanao. This was the forum that was actually set up and is part of the Philippine government structure. And originally, the dialogue and the forum's sponsorship of the dialogues included the highest level of ecumenical as well as interfaith leadership. Eventually, though, these dialogues found other ways and other venues. For example, these dialogues were placed in conflict-prone zones. So they were not just kind of removed from areas, but rather going to where the people are. And another example of that community level dialogue also transformed once again to meet the needs of new generations. So they actually, the BUF partnered with schools and some of the students to work with interfaith seminars in the school systems. Now, just again, as a way of just assessing how that kind of work is helpful, I began to see some of the workshops and understanding the effect of the workshops through the testimony of students themselves. And I quote two students who went through a workshop, and I highlight for you in particular why I think their work had some impact towards conflict transformation. Why? Because of this understanding that peace and conflict transformation is not only about what is happening now, but a way of envisioning the future. And this very much resonates with what Lederach is offering in his conflict transformation. This is what I mean by the highlighted yellow part of defining conflict, peace, and vision for community after 50 years. Students may not think of themselves in 50 years, but however, the activity of that day was to help them to think about the future. But the other thing is that future was really brought back to a grounded understanding of what to do now, and to understand that students can begin to see themselves as peace advocates now, not just 50 years from now. But again, going back to what Lederach has said in his, especially in the practices around conflict transformation, dialogue should not be a one-time experience, but rather perhaps they can be grounded also in other shared experiences. And for the case of the students, the proposal would be, what if students were to actually do community projects together and not just be talking through or talking sake or dialogue for dialogue's sake. The last case study I want to take you through is the Moro Christian People's Alliance. And I would like to share with you just the origins of that alliance because it relates to what they can still do in terms of conflict transformation. Some of you may know of this organization, but according to the General Secretary and my interview with her, this actually began first with Christians who were living already in Mindanao among some of the Bangsamoro peoples. But when they moved back to Manila, they found that solidarity was still needed in some very formal way. And one of the ways that solidarity is acted out is through fact-finding missions. These fact-finding missions have a quick way of understanding the situation on the ground. But these fact-finding missions also figure very much as a big data point and a data source for the universal periodic review. And so in some ways you might say, and when you look at the language of the report, the language does not seem to suggest efforts towards conflict resolution, or excuse me, they suggest partially conflict resolution and conflict management. Now, where's the potential for conflict transformation? And that's the question. Is it possible with all of that data collection that they might be able to see the bigger picture instead of just drilling down into the actual events where there are attacks or there are military incursions into their area? Is there a way that conflict transformation might help them to do beyond what they are doing? This is something that else I wanted to point out for you just again, because it came in the form of this interview. This comes from the idea that when people talk about conflict transformation, they also have a way of talking about themselves. And Lederach, again, going back to some of the practices around conflict transformation, is encouraging and supporting these ideas of when people start talking about who they are, where they come from, to lean into that and to actually make a use of spaces and processes that can build upon those discussions of identity and relationship for the sake of conflict transformation. So I want to give you an example. This is not something that I prompted Amira to speak of. However, it just came out when I asked her, which tribe do you come from? She says, it's like, I do like being identified as Iranon. Iranon is one of the 13 ethno-linguistic groups, but not so much that I am erased because of Bangsamoro. I'm proud of my tribe, Iranon, and part of the origins of that tribe, but not so much to destroy the concept of collective unity of the Bangsamoro. So you can hear some of that navigation and even the reconciliation of what it means to have to find one's way even in a diverse landscape that might be understood as a collective identity as the Bangsamoro, but what does that mean for the individual? What does that mean for the specific tribe? In conclusion, friends, again, I just want to assert again, what are the contributions of conflict transformation from Appleby as well as from Lederach? Both do recognize the short, medium, long-term efforts of multiple actors, not just religious actors. And they do recognize that long-term efforts towards conflict transformation will include prevention and managing conflict. But to expand, conflict transformation should include creation of constructive change. Through this case study of 3 different religious actors, we can see they have contributed to parts of conflict transformation, but they also have some more potential to contribute to change processes. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Reverend Katie. Now let's move to Lazy's presentation, please.
Yes, thank you very much. In my opinion, I should not present today because I'm still collecting data and my presentation, I'm improving. But thanks, Dr. Lee, because you helped me to at least try to find a direction. So I will present because I want to hear from you, and with your opinion, of course, I want to develop more my paper. So I'm really inspired by the human trafficking case in Thailand, and I decided to direct this paper to something that I really want to research. And I start to read some papers, and I found that there are a lot of NGOs that work with human trafficking, and they are Christian in Thailand. But they have positive and negative practice. So I start to collect some data with that, and I hope to direct my paper for that. So I hope you helped me to understand and how I can do this research about that. So this is the outline of, I hope to develop my paper. And in the introduction, I found that according to some researchers, the human trafficking in Thailand, it's carried by 95% in the country. And these 95% of organizations are Christian. So we can see that Christian religion is playing a big role in counter human trafficking in Thailand. But there is a few research about the negative and positive practice. Okay, they are working with human trafficking in Thailand, but how is this work? It's a good work or not good? And why these Christians are working for human trafficking in Thailand? What are the motivations? Why motivate them, give them this inspiration to fight against human trafficking? And what are the positive and negative practice? So I'm still need to polish and everything, but my purpose it is to identify and describe the motivation for Christians engaged in human trafficking in Thailand, and also the negative and positive practice of this work. So this is my main purpose: motivations, positive and negative practice. So with that, I have Dr. Lee helped me to frame two research questions. So one, it's what are the religious motivations for Christian organizations engaged in human trafficking in Thailand? And the second is, what are the positive and negative practice that they are doing in the country in counter human trafficking? So my methodology was a case study because it's here in Thailand and counter human trafficking, and I used qualitative technique for analysis the facts. So my thesis statement, it is that religious motivations lead Christian organizations in counter human trafficking in Thailand, and they work as positive and negative practice. And it's important to understand that so these organizations could address and improve their work when they realize the negative practice. And my contribution, I think, it would be to understand the aspect of the Christian religion service in combat human trafficking. So I will understand more the Christian service in the country, and highlight the importance of positive and negative practice to improve their work so they can address the negative points and do better. For my literature review, I study more about religious peace building and how religious peace building helped the country to resolve some conflicts and create a new society with organizations marked by toleration and non-violence. But religion as well, as we study with Dr. Lee, has the ability to promote something good and something bad. And the actors, Apebla, he says, the militants on behalf of the other, and also the militants against the other. So, and we can see we will see in the finds, in the same way, the Christian organizations in Thailand, in a kind of way, could promote something good, but something bad. So I think in my literature review, religious peace building could help to understand that. And also, religions, I cannot read here, but religions, in the way that religions has something good to help, like the constructive dimensions. So how they are helping in Christian organizations are helping to counter human trafficking. The second point, the context of human trafficking in Thailand, this I need to develop more, but we know that Thailand is surrounded by many countries that are facing economic instability and political as well, like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and especially political Myanmar, for example. And this makes that many migrants came to Thailand and they try to find job, they try to find better opportunities, but during this way that they're coming to the country, and somehow they fell in the human trafficking issues. This could be because they believe in some promise of jobs and like fish industry, or some women as well, they are catch, and especially child, in the sexual human trafficking. So in this topic, I will make a review about how is the situation of human trafficking in Thailand, and also understand more how the Palermo Protocol and some legal instruments address that in Thailand. For my research finds, what I found, and this is two topics. First find that I found, it's about the motivations of Christian organizations in counter human trafficking in Thailand. And I read some papers, and they did many interviews with Christians works in these two papers that I read. And they all, we can see that one motivation is Christian religion, like the figure of Jesus Christ that always serve the others in a humble way, and also serve the lowest people and healing them. So many workers, they told that, Christian workers told that they came to Thailand because they want to follow the example of Jesus. So this is one of the motivations, and that is more, but they have motivations like the cosmovision that God created human beings like his image. So we should try to find the way to restore the dignity of all these human beings that are fell in human traffic and sexual human traffic and work human traffic. So Christians workers in Thailand, they have this vision that because all the human beings are the same that God, we should restore and try to help them to have dignity. And also the motivations for these Christian workers and Christian organizations, it's that we should bring the kingdom of God today in the heaven, in the way that we should promote peace in the earth, like one day we have in the earth. So this is the motivations in general. And another find that I found from these papers is positive aspects of Christian workers and Christian organizations in Thailand, and negative. I'll start with the positives, and that is more. I could not put all here, but some of them is because the positive aspects of this organization is that they are caring and they are working places that usually are forgotten, and they are doing for not receive money or receive clauses or to people give something to them. But they are doing that in places that it's very poor, and that is people that cannot reward them. So, and also they work, these organizations work outside time. They work in, if someone called them, even outside the time of the work of the organization, they're still helping. And we can see that these Christian organizations, they have perseverance and durability. This is some finds that I found in these papers. And also these organizations, Christians work with spiritual holy, that is something important, spiritual healing, that is something important in this restorative journey, and they work with freedom, forgiveness, that could help these people that fell in human trafficking to move on. And these Christian organizations also are engaged in the way to address the whole situation, not only rescue people, but there is some Christian organizations that are working to promote jobs and create, to find new opportunities and work in the structural context, for example, providing documents and also provide a way for children study. So they work with prevention of human trafficking. So this is some positive aspects. And going to the last find, that is negative aspects, there is some Christian organizations that still working with this colonial approach. I mean, for the way that I came with a better idea, I came here to rescue, I am better than you, poor of you, And this just increased the level of the difference in the way that these Christian organizations doesn't came in a humble way, but some of them came with this pride that these people need them. And this is not a good way to help and to serve people. And so they have this savior complex, and they came to rescue victims. And some of them who measure their achievements in the way that they try to convert people, and they use the numbers to receive donor or receive money from outside as a way to measure their work. So this is some findings. And also there is some Christian organizations that force conversions in exchange of relief assistance. So this is something that still need to improve. And one of them separate kids from the village, put them in shelters, and okay, and in the way we are helping, but this is not a good idea. And the last I cannot read because I stopped, because I put very big. I'm sorry for that. Yeah, I can see now. Just a minute. And the last is lack of accountability and collaboration. So I saw in some research that some Christian organizations are, especially the small organizations, they doesn't have someone for them, they can report their work. And some of them are working very individual. They're not collaborating with government, or they're not collaborating with other organizations and exchange information and try to improve themselves. They are very isolated. So this is one negative aspect. So in conclusion, these are still need to improve, but Christian organizations in combat human trafficking, they have this Christian vision for their service and Jesus as a model for what they are doing. They have positive and negative aspects in control human trafficking, and they must address the negative aspects, and they must improve their work. They need to learn from each other and to collaborate and to have accountability in the way to improve, and they must allow, of course, with the legal framework and everything. For example, doesn't take children from family and put in a shelter in the way to improve their work. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Lazy. Let's move to the last presentation. Mr. Ang, please.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Present of me. Okay, good morning, everybody. Well done to everybody. And I'm the last one. Okay, my research is Interfaith Dialogues Initiative for promoting unity among faith groups to strengthen peace building in Myanmar. So the background of the the research is about the Myanmar population, where we find more, 87% of Buddhists, and this is one of the majority. And the root cause is the prime minister. After the independence, he tried to enact Buddhism as a state religion. That start the problem, whole problem. And they are trying to harmonize. Sorry, not me. I have some Buddhism here also. But they are trying to harmonize the majority values to the ethnic population. So that drive the first EAO, the Kachin independent organization, to separate themselves and to rebel against the government. That is the first. The second one is the uprising, not the Rohingya, but the pre-one, 2012. When I say about the KI also, it's about the Christianity, because the Christianity is seen, it's seen as the how do you call it, the result of colonialism. Yeah, because the colony, they came and they just missionary, and then they convert people to Christian. So Christian is seen as an enemy from the beginning. Now with the Muslim, the outbreak in Rakhine State in 2012, and followed by that, the consequence in the middle of Myanmar, killings, burning. I've seen that with my eye because I went there for training too. So after 2012, there's a gap, but still that the sleeping tiger. 2017 again, the military crackdown this time is a lot more and becoming the world famous crisis in the world. So what's the problem here? The problem is of course, between 2012 and 2017, that uprising, the duration is in between the two government, the military-led, democratic government, and Aung San Suu Kyi-led NLD government. So let's see the two. The president Thein Sein, he encouraged, this is like a lip service, encourage the interfaith dialogue, and even give a President Excellent Award to the interfaith dialogue groups in Myanmar. We have several interfaith dialogue initiatives, and that's it. But at the same time, there's a parallel, encountering with the Buddhist nationalism, extremists. They call it Mahabharata, the monks, the famous monk who led, and then they said preventing our allegiance, preventing our nationalism. So with the initiative of Wu Dengxing come the parallel activities from that group. And let's go to the NLD. We see that the NLD also organize rallies and start like a role model and initiatives. So NLD has done the first rally mass. And then again, even in a state level, she talked in the forum about peace building involving interfaith dialogue. So that is from the state level initiative. And then following her advice, her guideline, there comes international organization, national organization, even local organization. And then they start the initiatives, the interfaith dialogues. But what's the problem is, of course, they have their own agenda and they have their own efforts, they have their own activities, maybe I can say separately, fragmented. And some have political gain or social gain in their agenda. And maybe they miss to dig deep down for finding the way for reconciliation among the interfaith groups. So here I just refer John Paul Lederer about the peace building. The interfaith dialogues is a permanent and required platform to make such engagement at multiple levels. These all highlight the problems in Myanmar, because it have to be sustained and it have to be in multiple levels. So do we have that? The research purpose is to explore whether initiatives in the interfaith dialogue in Myanmar, do they really promote unity among the faith groups and towards the strengthening of peace building? Is it really working or contributing to peace building? So my research question 3 required question is, what form of interfaith dialogue they have used? So I will look into the forms. The second, what are they talking about? What are they doing? The contents. Third is, what are the achievement and the contribution to uniting the groups, the divided groups, and how the effort strengthen the peace building? That is my 3 questions. Okay, so the terms and terms of definitions, all these words: interfaith dialogue, unity among faith groups, and peace building. The theoretical framework is first, we find the problem, and then the intervention part. Dr. Lee always told me that intervention is a military strike. It's not that. I mean, it's an NGO intervention. I mean, interfaith dialogue initiatives for unity among religions that is coming in, and the content based on the literature review. So I review the literature, and then I find the context and the forms, the contents of the dialogues and the form and the types of it. Yeah. And then after that, it's we go to the outcome. What do they achieve? And do they really strengthen the unity of the religions and the peace building? That is the theoretical framework. So chapter 2. Chapter 2, I refer to Hans Kung about if there is no peace among the there will be no peace among the religions without dialogue among the religions. So the importance of interfaith dialogues for the conflicts. And then Leonard Swindler is about the only way, interfaith dialogue is the only way to move forward. So, and also Fatma Sahu, due to limited knowledge of other religions. So we here the problem in Myanmar also. I mean, the theories say that we don't know ourselves and we don't know others. That's why the problem is there. So we need to talk. That's okay. And then the forms of the dialogues is from Mr. M. Thomas Tangarash, an Indian professor. So she's a Christian, and the form is divided into four types. Dialogue of every day. So that interfaith dialogue is about socializing, building relationship. Yeah, that's the main objective of that type of dialogue. And the other one is the dialogue of action. That means helping people, participating and working for the well-being of humanity. So that's another kind of dialogue. And the other dialogue is theological exchange. That means talking about the religion and beliefs and sharing and spiritual value. That's the one. And the last one is dialogue of religious experience. That is sharing spiritual praise and rituals and yeah, this is the types of interfaith dialogue. So what do we talk about in interfaith dialogue? It's in Celia Jacko, the book of Building Bridges for Interfaith Dialogue. What do we talk in interfaith dialogue? We talk about justice. Justice mean I mean the people who convicted the crimes and the people who are convicted, of course, but we will be talking about justice. We have to be open, but not fight. The second one, reconciliation. Okay, after finding the things and we reconcile, and we talk about forgiveness, we talk about truth. Truth means the values we hold and what we build too. And from that, we take it to conflict transformation and peace building, like reconciliation, collaboration, something like that, and peace building. That is the models. Okay, then I actually, this is not in my research question, but I want to include it because this is like a principle. So when we have a dialogue, what principle we hold? Something like code of conduct, and these are all the code of conduct that we have to take care not to derail or not to provoke. How do you call it? Okay, I'm sorry. And then we went to the I'll go to the challenge, achievement and challenge from the theoretical. So this is the papers that we read about the conversation starter that Kathy presents, and then I go and watch it again, and it helps me a lot, you know. And this is the achievement. when we do interfaith dialogue, this growing awareness, participation of women, participation of youth, education, research, publishing, and all these things, when I compare it to the activities in Myanmar, it's match. I map it. So grassroots interaction, exemplary practices. But we also have the challenge where we interfaith dialogue. This is taken from the Balkans. So the legacy for communism, maybe here the legacy of military something. And link between religions and politics, that too, religious and used by politics. And weak tradition of interreligious dialogue. We don't have that before. And this is the same in Balkan time. The role of interreligious international organization, international INGO and NGO, they are the one who lead this dialogue. But what are their hidden agenda? What are their objectives? A discontinued organizational practice, even they start, but they never finish. I mean, they just go out of that. So the research method mean it is qualitative, it's more on exploratory nature, and I read a lot of I have to read a lot of theory and also many project reports and even articles and news about all these incidences. Yeah? So literature review, and I have some case studies that different organizations do, and the case studies. And I personally have the privilege to meet Professor Solheim Boa, who is the one of the Religion for Peace executive member. And I talked to him about 2 hours and interviewing him what they did. So the research method will be inductive, inducing from there, and the grounded theory. Okay, this one I have to be going very fast. This is the NLD left government, what they do. This is about the mass, this is about a forum, and this is, what I found is fascinating is the Buddhist summons. They go to different streets and they go to different cities and towns and organize summons where the monks preaches every night. So at least, and this is a mass, more than thousands of people attended. So that is like the Buddhists themselves, they try to find out their own inner spiritual value. And then also but all these are how do you call ceremonial, more unceremonial things, and but it's about how do you call experience sharing of spiritual things. But the thing is that this is government led, and it's a bit weak because it's top, not going to, not I mean, it's just a government. So we can see the international, sorry if I take too much time, sorry. I have only another 3 slides. The international and local actors, Judson Research Centers, this is one of the Mr. Limeboy is one of the founder of them, and they are more on the theological things, talking about religions and discussing. Yeah. But later on, we have people in need. We have Kaisit from International Peace Myanmar Initiative, and we have Interfaith Dialogue Training Centers that is more about training and workshops and capacity building. And also we have other more organization like Mosaic Myanmar, when they organize the diversity tour to multi-religious sites. That means more activities, going to temples, trainings, workshop, and even they conduct conflict prevention workshop. And here the Meta campaign is more on literary talk, documentation, media, debates, publishing, and praise. So you can see different kind of interfaith dialogues in different forms that fall into that 4 type. And these are all the local actors. So I don't think that before my research, I don't think that much happened, but it happened a lot, and it's noticeable. So the achievement of all these activities, starting from the government to the grassroots level, the international, national, and communication support is there. You can see, because people come, people understand, people enjoy it, people involved. So at least it's enabled new relationship and friendship, and enhance the faith network between different faith groups, and also capacity building for the women, for the young people, for the leaders and for the community leaders. And we create at least a shared value of different religions. Before, we don't know each other. No, I know Muslim, but I don't know what are they doing. No? So at least the challenge of stereotypes, we starting sharing the stereotype and power structure, because this is Myanmar and Burma, and is more Buddhism supremacy. We train the local people, develop the leadership capacity, develop revolutionary partnership. Before, it's people see themselves as enemies. Now they can work together, and creating institutionalized and popularized relations experience. Okay, my conclusion is that in the state level, I see this as religious experience sharing. It's a pray, it's a ceremonial, conducting rituals, but it has a meaning itself. In I think it's a model, and it's involved more political leaders and religious leader. But when I asked Soline, what a professor, he said it's more elite. Yeah, but at least it works. And the NGO and NGO, they do more. The awareness training, the workshop, the trainings, theological thing, action, media, publishing, they do a lot. And from the grassroots level, we have socializing, rebuilding relation, community services. So my question is, what they achieve, yes, positive. And promoting unity among faith groups, yes, there is a positive contribution of these activities. How about strengthening peace building? For peace building, it's not a one-day story, but it have to be sustained and more sessions. And we talk about top-down, but now top-down, but bottom-up, these two have to match. They cannot be fragmented. And there must be an institution. Of course, we have Ministry of Religion, but do they link themselves with all these organizations and as a leadership role, or the grassroots? The linkage should be there. What I found out. And the last one, sorry, majority involvement. That's the recommendation is it's a religious supremacy and stereotype. So the major of course, there are ethnic minority and the other religion, smaller religion groups are involving, but Myanmar, Burma, the Buddhists, the monks themselves, they have to involve. We need that more involvement on there. And also the strengthened relationship, not just the faith group, but we have so much ethnic races in Myanmar. So linking the religions and the ethnic and the culture together. And also increase awareness widely among the overall population. Of course, here and there happen, but in a whole, holistic increasing of awareness and advocacy. So another one is require long term. It's not the one just, it's not a project based. Sorry to say that. And but we have local organization that supporting them. So engagement in all level, top down, bottom up, everything. So engagement of, when you say government lead it, but actually government involvement to the grassroots level, and the grassroots level report to the government, the linking thing should be there. So that's my finding and recommendation. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Ong. Now we have 20 minutes or 25 minutes left for question, answer, comments. I see in the chat box several comments. So let's go to the chat box first. We have comments from Dr. Ray. For Katie, Reverend Katie, good knowledge of fact and figures, as well as theories of Lederach and Appleby. Appleby and Lederach were presented separately. Challenge is to clearly establish the linkage back Appleby, Lederach, and how concretely they apply to your study of the three cases. actor support typology, actor support literary, etc. You as an academic see the relationship, not the three religious actors. You as academic author either use the two integrated theories deductively and check, or number two, describe the work of the three cases inductively. Your cases do not have to conform to Lederach or Appleby. That's not their job. They are busy doing their practical work on the ground. So how would you know if they can be involved in conflict transformation? Please stay focused on your key theme. It appears you use Appleby and Lederach as series for your paper. You need a literature review beyond Appleby and Lederach. Be encouraged. Okay. What else for Reverend Katie? I think that's it for Reverend Katie, I think. So yeah, I think Dr. Ray's comment is valid, Reverend Katie. I'm very glad that your paper is focused now. And it's clear you focus on one concept, conflict transformation, and you use the two scholars, the theories from Lederach and Appleby. But I think you need to kind of integrate the framework, list out maybe concrete indicators or criteria that you will apply throughout the three cases. You can produce your own framework if you want. You can merge them together and then list out how many indicators from the merged framework that I will use to apply throughout the three cases. So it's to avoid confusing, going back and forth. So you can have Katie's framework now based on Appleby's and Lederach framework of conflict transformation. Now I come to a synthesized framework, Katie's framework. You list out how many factors you want to check throughout the three cases. Then it will be clear. We don't have to switch back. Which one is got to which one is Lederach? It's too confusing. Okay. Okay, I think it's very good. Focus and have clear concept, apply throughout the case study, and then you can make your own arguments. Now next, Lazy, Matthias, he has his comments here. Please check your title. How can negative practices prevent human trafficking? Not sure whether I understand right. When has Thailand signed the Palermo Protocol? Have you mapped the Christian organizations working in the field of anti-trafficking? And then Dr. Ray has a comment for Lazy. Topic is good, loads of good information. Some thoughts are here. One, religious motivation of Christian organizations. Isn't that a circular argument, or that's the assumption? Two, you have not identified readings, authors, citation in your literature theory. Who said that? You talk about positive and negative. What are your sources? Which Christian organization said this or that? Which organization have positive or negative aspects? No sources. For credibility, need sources. How can Christian organizations not do the negative aspects? Some suggestions here. Let's see what else for.
Dr. Lee, can I?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. You can respond now.
Yeah. It is great. All the things that Dr. Ray wrote. I'm sure researching that, but one work that I read and I use for this research, they did in anonymous interview. So this woman, it's a thesis from her doctor program, and she did all the interviews, but she doesn't said what Christian organization said that or that, and what she didn't reveal the name of the organizations that she interviewed. So with that, I just can refer to her. But I have another article, and I can be very clear with that. I just made this article to Matthias also. The name is Chiang Mai and how the Christian organizations are working in Chiang Mai. And they reveal the name of the organizations, for example, International Justice Ministry. And with that, I can tell what organization is doing what. But the most of the organizations I cannot because the interviews are anonymous. So maybe I can explain that. It's great. I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Lazy. I think Matthias has one point that I agree in the map of Christian organization working. Your paper lacked a kind of background information meant to provide, I don't know if you have it or not, kind of statistics. The history of Christian NGOs, like until now, how they've developed in this area, just facts, show that how they started their work and they how many of them in the whole country, things like that. For Dr. Reyes, I think valid the motivations, it should come from the Christian NGOs themselves. You need to refer to sources, citation, not your own speculation, because you are talking about them, you represent them. So data should come from these NGOs, Christian NGOs. You have to support, you present them, not your own speculation from other sources than the Christian NGO sources.
Sorry, Dr. Lee, I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. And now for the motivation, religious motivation for Christian organizations, the data you present for this part, they must come from the views of the Christian NGOs. I mean, from their own, you have to find information from them, not from you. Not from your own speculation, not from your own sources other than their sources. So you have to support. It's just like you code them.
Okay.
Yeah,
like
they
I can look in the website and see
yes.
what they tell and what they believe. Okay.
Yes, exactly. It must come from them, not from you. You cannot speak for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. For the positive, negative effects, yeah, you also need to code them specifically from which sources that say this and that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's for, let me see if I have something else for you. Okay, I think that's it. It's good, Lazy. I think your paper, if you want to be publishable, I think you need more sources. So your contribution is like a systematized literature, various sources about the issue, because I noticed you code primarily from one source. That is not, this may become kind of, you present, their work, that's not acceptable. So you have to kind of gather various sources and then systematize them. So your contribution is based on a synthesis, I mean, like based on the systematic knowledge about the issue. If you have used only one or two sources, cannot say contribution. So try to triangulate more sources on the issue. Good. I think the focus is fine. The structure is okay. Now let's move to Mr. Ong. Good topic from Dr. Ray. Lots of facts. Theoretical framework. Not sure you apply letter rock, whom you have mentioned. Not sure if you wanted to apply letter rock. Hangul code needs page number, need to stay focused, remove extras. And then let me see what else. Cite her thesis, sources you use. no citation in your PowerPoint at all. For lazy, right, Dr. Ray? I understand lazy narrative aspects. But
Yes.
yeah, such as safer context still donate can still work against human trafficking.
Dr. Ray, can I have your comment personally? Sorry again. So to understand more.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Dr. Lee is not finished. Yes.
Let me read Miss Ken comment. Could Mr. Ang explain what peace building lens he is using in his analysis of his presentation? He seems to give the impression that he's using his own lens to analyze the topic. Okay, Mr. Ang, time for you to respond.
Actually, I talked with Dr. Lee and I omit the letters model of peace building. Actually, the theory is there also, like when you do peace building, there is a reconciliation. When you do reconciliation, you have to talk about, you have to touch on justice and mercies and all these things. So it's related to another the contents of the other philosophers. So, but I can take it in again. Because Dr. Lee also said the one slide I take out the Dr. Lederer slide, so maybe I can put it in then and add the idea also for peace building, because my peace building part is not strong enough. Thank you for Kenoi, your comment, because I cover all the things, but the peace building part needed theoretical background too.
For you have any response to Dr. Ray about the little rock?
Oh,
You
no,
use it for your purpose there when you put little rock in the introduction. Your microphone.
I had to go back and see my slide.
Okay.
Which one? Yeah, which one is that? I don't know.
Could I
Yes, Ms.
could I say
Kim.
something? Yeah,
Yeah, why not?
I think it's important to include in Gao Tong's because I think so far, you know, I mean, he's the one that is very analytical of the world situation, space and spaces and so on, which I think has been left out. That is very important in terms of analyzing what's happening in the world. Yeah, I mean, it gives you a kind of a worldwide perspective and in depth also, you know, historical perspective too. So hopefully that will give you some what you call well, some hope, you know, for the future. Yeah, I think for Lederach itself is I think the aspect on these contradictions, you know, this creative paradox is very interesting. So,
okay, thank you. For Mr. Ang, I think you should remove whatever you don't use. Don't need to code letterbox if you don't use it. Maybe if you want to justify, you pick one point from him, I suggest. Maybe if he talk about unity is important for, you know, peace building, just to justify your concept rather than use his framework. To prevent misunderstanding that you use his framework. I noticed that in your literature review, the way you present it may cause misunderstanding that you apply the framework. For example, the definition of interfaith dialogue, forms and contents. But finally, in your data analysis, you don't apply them at all. But I understand your research, you use the grounded theory approach. You build the theory, the framework from data rather than applying theories because none of the theory is applicable. For example, you talk about the 4 forms of interfaith dialogue. but I don't think you use them. So I would suggest in the literature review, you need to say one statement. These are just kind of provisional, informing, but my research will be grounded theory approach. I construct the theory, the answer, the framework from the data. The same for the content, because you put content, forgiveness, that and that, this, but I don't think your data analysis is very clear about content. You present the forms of interfaith dialogue with the government level, international, local, but then you jump into the achievements and contributions. So the content analysis is completely missing. So I would suggest you go back and present one section for content of interfaith dialogue to see what themes emerge from what you have from the data, what they focus, how they are relevant to promoting unity. So that second question that you need to focus in your data analysis. A little bit confusing for me about the achievements, and you put in your literature review, you talk about achievements and then challenges, but then in your data analysis, you have achievement contributions. It will be very inconsistent. So whatever you use, the key terms, they must be consistent with your data analysis key terms. So don't put challenges and then you don't have challenges in your data analysis. So if you don't use them, just remove them. So if you just you talk about achievements, then just talk about achievements. But if you put challenges there, you need to have challenges in your data analysis. I think that's it for my comments for you. So clean and remove irrelevant information, make it consistent. I think research is a matter of logic and focus. You have to keep in your mind how many things you have in your mind and go throughout the whole paper from beginning to end. Whatever diverges from the focus, you put question, remove it. So all the time have focus in your mind, key terms, all the time. Well, I miss out. What you promised in the beginning, you have to deliver throughout your paper. Whatever you don't focus, you have to put question when you add new term. Will I study this? Remove it. So that will help you become logical, consistent, systematic in your research. And it helps understanding too. It will be clear. Like 9, 3 terms all the time, right? Roles, contributions, and challenges just throughout. She doesn't have any extra thing. And so I think will be the same for other studies. So you can learn from that. Any extra comments and questions? I think we're very good. We are on time, right? So this is the last session of our class, Religion and Peace Building. I'm very happy with all your work. And I believe your work can be published in an international journal of peace building. So if you work hard enough, you need my help, please. You can submit your draft to me, and then I can help you clean it and revise, help you revise it, improve it. So you can submit for the journal. The deadline for your submission is December 15. So please submit by the deadline, and then later on, I can give you more feedbacks for your revision just for publication. All of your presentations today are wonderful. Wonderful. I think you have all the essence for your paper. So thank you very much for both classes from research methodology and religion and peace building. Thank you, Dr. Ray, for your time. I wish you all Merry Christmas and wonderful time with your families and friends, and hope to see you next semester. Okay. So thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes.